What's up, guys? Welcome to a special episode of the Young Guns podcast. We have Stefen Rosner of the New York Islanders Hockey Now covering a team that was quiet for most of the offseason. But this past week, there's been a lot of rumbles concerning a star UFA in Nazem Kadri potentially signing there. But there's also a lot of rumors attached to this signing. And before we start today's episode, we just like to say, thank you so much for everyone who has subscribed to our podcast. We're about to hit 1,000 subscribers. Our 1 year anniversary is August 15th. So if we could get there beforehand, that would be very appreciated. So if you guys haven't subscribed to our channel, please subscribe to our channel. And Stefan, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
Oh, my pleasure, guys. Happy to be here.
Perfect. So let's start getting into the biggest topic, obviously today, Nazem Kadri. So obviously you covered New York Islanders. What do you have to say in terms of this dossier?
Yeah, so obviously the Islanders, you could say missed it on Johnny Gaudreau. I think that would have been a perfect fit. It came down to it. It seemed like the Islanders really weren't as high up as the Devils, and then Columbus came in there. Now you look at Nazem Kadri. I mean, second-ranked free agent out there. A couple of weeks are going by. He's not being signed. And we saw last year, Lou Lamoriello waits. He announced 5 signings on September 1st last offseason. So this is not – anytime you see a lot of quiet around a player, it could be coming to Long Island. Now, I want to preface this by saying Lou Lamoriello doesn't leak anything. Any intel that I get or any other media guys get is not coming from him. And it's usually not coming from anyone inside the Islanders organization. And what we heard yesterday may not be true tomorrow. So I think what we're hearing now, the past weekend, I spoke to somebody who said Kadri's coming to Long Island, but they want to move cap before the move is made. Now, as you guys know, teams can go over 10% of their cap prior to the season beginning. They just have to be compliant when the season starts. The problem is, if the Islanders were willing to bring in Kadri first and then try to move, I mean, teams know that Lambert needs to move cap, and we know how hard it is. I mean, you saw like Pasaretti, he got moved for nothing. Like teams are having a hard time moving cap, and you look at the Islanders and they're having the same issue here. So, I mean, Nazem Kadri coming creates a little more questions than answers for the New York Islanders. They have 4 centers. You have Barzal, Nelson, interchangeable first or second, whatever you want to do there. Jean-Gabriel Pageau and Casey Zizekas. So someone would have to move to wing. But you look at an Islanders team, they went back-to-back conference finals, just couldn't get over that hump. They have an important season this past year. COVID hits, everything goes wrong. This team started playing better in the second half, but then too many games in a short amount of time. They were winded and they couldn't get it done and get back in the postseason. Now, Nazem Kadri is a great player. I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago where I thought he was a great player the way he plays. Hard-nosed guy, crashes the net, shoots the puck. He has that winning mentality because he just won. But again, that positioning aspect. So as of yesterday, the confidence level that the Islanders are signing or plan to sign Nazem Kadri is very high. Again, there's just certain things that have to be done first before Lou Lamoriello is comfortable making the signing official. Again, could it be next week we get a signing? Could we find out in September? It's Lou Lamoriello. He pretty much controls how that information gets leaked out. But I think the longer Kadri goes without signing with the team, the more likely he is Long Island bound.
Well, I think what's interesting about Kadri, and I think a lot of us have been really curious about this too, and I think we mentioned it a long time on another episode that we did about the Islanders. The Islanders need an offensive push. We've always seen the Islanders as a defensive team. We saw their system under Barry Trotz, very good defensively, very responsible defensively, but not being the team that scores a lot of goals. And I think when you add a guy like Kadri, if they do end up adding him to their team, I think it would make the Islanders a whole lot better, and I think it would make them go back to kind of where they were, 2 years ago, where they did go to the conference final, and just fell short of potentially going there. And so I think with Kadri, it allows them to have a player for Matthew Barzal, but at the same time, it also allows the Islanders to finally go and push themselves to become an offensive team. And one of the things too that I had mentioned or that I found interesting, and I'm surprised it didn't happen at the draft, was the fact that, because the Islanders hired, I think his name is Lane Lambert, the coach of the Islanders, I was very convinced that they were going to draft Brad Lambert in the draft, and they didn't. And so I was just a little bit surprised by that. But anyways, I just think the Islanders need to focus on offense a little bit more. And I think signing Kadri would absolutely put them a little bit, over the hump, in my opinion. So
So, yeah, I would agree with you, but it depends on who they move out. Now, if it's
Yeah.
Josh Bailey, who's got 2 years left, $5 million cap hit, he has nothing attached to his contract. Again, he could go anywhere that the Islanders want to move him to, is if you don't move him and you have to move somebody else. If you move a guy like Jean-Gabriel Pageau, he had an injury a year ago. This season, he didn't seem like himself, got much better as the season went on, but he does so much for you. So I think if you were out to lose a guy like Pageau, who you could play on the power play, one of your best penalty killers, great face-off guy, he does the little things. Barry Trotz was very big on doing the little things in a game. If you guys saw, Oliver Wahlstrom didn't do that, and his ice time suffered. Kiefer Bellows early in the season did that. Ice time suffered. Anthony Beauvillier, Montreal native, right, or Quebec native, he got scratched. He demands. Doesn't matter. Yes, the veterans have longer leashes, but they still have to do the little things to win in the Trotz system. Now, like you mentioned, Lane Lambert, who's been an associate coach with the New York Islanders since Trotz came over, who knows what system he's going to play. You look at the Islanders, and yes, they need to be a more offensive-based team. That doesn't mean their strength has to be offense. I fully believe, especially in the NHL, especially in playoff hockey, you got to keep your strength a strength, especially in the salary cap era. The Islanders' bread and butter is their defense. As much as they want to be an offensive force, it's never going to happen. They don't have the Johnny Gaudreaus, the Matthew Tkachuks. I mean, Nazem Kadri is a great player, but you have to not take it with a grain of salt. He scored 30 goals or close to it before on teams that aren't named the Colorado Avalanche, obviously Toronto. So he'll make the offense better, but this team is still based on defense. And I think, they saw the drop-off in offense this past year. Yes, the offensive players weren't bearing at the rate they needed to, but you also lost Ryan Pulock on defense, your team's best transitioner. And that's how the Islanders can create offense, off the rush. Getting up the ice quickly because their defense is so strong, picking off pucks in the neutral zone, right inside the Islanders zone, pushing the puck up. They didn't have Pulock to help do that. And I think that's where the Islanders offense is going to come from their defense moving forward. Noah Dobson bursted onto the scene in December, became that puck-moving transitioner that they wanted and needed, but he's still 22 years old. They bring in a guy like Romanov, who you guys know very well.
Yes.
He's a guy that can really help. He's not, I think he scored 10 goals 3 goals, right? He scored 10 goals
Yeah, he scored 3 goals last year.
3 goals and I think 10 assists is what he had. Obviously, the guy has a shot, physical body, great skater. He doesn't have to be the offensive machine, but he's going to help with the transition game. And you got Pulock back fully healthy. So you have a strong enough defense right now that should help your offense. Again, Kadri, great player. He was on a dynamic Colorado Avalanche team. You look at Devon Taves, who Islander fans, they'll stay awake for years thinking about that move that Lambert made for 2 second-round picks.
That one stings.
Taves was very good with the Islanders, but he wasn't to the level he was now, and he wasn't playing with a guy like Cale Makar. That's not saying that Devon Taves is not a good defenseman. They got to look at their situation. Avalanche are a juggernaut team. Kadri's not going against the best defensive players on a given night. You look at Matt Barzal in his Calder-winning season. He was not going against the best defenseman on the ice. He was playing the second-line role or even the third. So you're now going to have a guy in Kadri, if he becomes that number one line center, going against the best of the best in the league. And he's 31 years old, entering his age 32 season. Was last year just one of those years where everything clicked? I know he got hurt in the postseason, but he came with a huge goal. I think it was Game 6 against Vasilevsky where he scored that overtime winner, or Game 3, whichever one it was. Can Kadri be that guy on a team that's not as talented? That's the biggest question, because if you sign him to a long-term deal like Lou is accustomed to doing to older players, if you sign him to a 6 or 7 year deal at $7 million annually, and in year one he can't perform the way he just played in Colorado, that is going to be one of those contracts you could add to a list of contracts that are going to really hurt this team. Because if they don't win now, they're going for the win now move if they bring Kadri in. And if they don't win, they're going to have a very hard time staying relevant as every other team in the Metro gets younger and better. The Islanders their core's young. You got Barzal, Beauvillier, Bellows, Wahlstrom if Bellows remains. I could see him going in a deal with Josh Bailey if Josh Bailey is the guy that gets moved, because, again, we just talked about how it's hard to move cap. You're going to have to entice a team. I would think of 2 teams off the bat that could take on the cap. Look at Arizona. They just love taking on players that'll never play again, or cap. They took Andrew Ladd from the Islanders last summer. Chicago was another team that I have no idea what they're doing, but add fuel to the fire there and give them Josh Bailey. And then one tidbit with Arizona is Kiefer Bellows and Clayton Keller. They played U.S. development together. They went to BU together. So they have that connection. Maybe that's a move that gets done. But again, everything we talked about is just strictly what we're hearing. Again, it's Lou, but Kadri helps the Islanders. It's just about, are you going to get enough out of him on a team where he doesn't have the talent like he had with Colorado?
That's it.
Sorry, I want to kind of bring up a question actually, just because
Yeah.
So the team currently has $1.1 million in cap space, and listen, let's
11.1.
face it,
Yeah.
11.1. Sorry, and
Yeah.
Kadri's getting paid. Like to get paid around what area? About 8 or 9 million, I would say.
I would say I think the Islanders could do it for 7. I think again it's tough because I think him and his agent wanted a good amount. And you're looking at a player in COD who's been through a lot in this league.
Yeah.
You know, just what he's dealt through and socially, just obviously all that kind of stuff he's had to dealt with. He gets a chance to become a free agent and get paid. It makes complete sense. Age 31, entering age 30 season, he wants to get paid. You don't know when you're going to have a chance to hit free agency again, and you don't know you're going to come off a year like you just had. He does have a connection with Lamoriello. Their days in Toronto. Lamoriello didn't trade him to Colorado, but Lamoriello was there with Kadri. Apparently, they have a great relationship. And again, you're selling him on Long Island. It's a place to have a family. You know, great area to live. It's just like you said, we don't know what the term is. I think he wanted what you just said, 8 or north of 8 for 7 to 8 years. He wants that stability, which you can't blame any hockey player, any sport, any athlete. You never get injured tomorrow, and that's it. So you want to have that insurance for you and your family. You want generational wealth, and you could have that. I know hockey is tough with that because the contracts aren't like MLB where you're asking for $550 million. I mean, that's never going to happen in the NHL. I think term-wise, if I'm the Islanders, you could get Kadri for $7 million at 4 years. I think that's a
reasonable
home run signing. Again, it's going to be Lou Lamoriello has a way of getting things done. Again, we've seen in the past though certain contracts. Like Anders Lee's been great, but he signed a 7x7 deal.
Yeah,
you never know. I mean, again, when you're going for the win now, it doesn't like if Kadri comes into the Long Island, signs for 7 years at $7 million, the same thing as Lee. They win a Stanley Cup this year or the year after, and then after that, his contract it hurts the Islanders. Well, you won. So at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to do. The Islanders haven't won in a very long time, and this is their 50th anniversary season coming up. So that would be what a way to end this year for them. But yeah, Kadri, I think Kadri wanted more, and I don't think he was there, which is why he's still a free agent. And I think certain teams maybe, I do think he wanted to go back to Colorado, but clearly when they signed Valeri Nichushkin and did other moves, they showed that, listen, you're not really our top priority. And at the last second, could Kadri go back to Colorado and just take a major pay cut if he liked the area, liked his teammates? Absolutely. He definitely could. I know that the Islanders did offer Kadri a deal a couple weeks ago. Couldn't share it then, but I could share that now that they did. I don't know what the term was. You're never going to find that out. And he's probably been thinking about it, waiting for a team like Colorado to clear cap. They haven't. You have Calgary now as a team that has a lot of cap space. Let's see what they do with Huberdeau and Weegar.
Yeah.
You have other teams. I know Columbus was actually really interested in Kadri, but then they saw Gaudreau and said, yeah, bye, Kadri. That's not happening, as every team would have done if they could bring in a Gaudreau-like player. So it's very interesting to see what his contract will be like. But like I said, if they could get him for 7 years, $7 million, which I think he will get, because the Islanders do have this space. And I was just talking about this a couple minutes before. Cap friendly is great, like great tool, 11.13 or change for the Islanders in cap space. But one thing they don't consider is that Robin Salo is buried right now and non-rostered. He's at $800,000. If the Islanders don't trust Salo to be ready, they'll have to sign a veteran defenseman to a league minimum. So that number is more around 10.3. Obviously that's not the extension of like decimals and stuff, but 10.3 million in space. You have to sign Dobson. You have to sign Romanov. You have to sign Bellows if you're not moving him. So the Islanders are going to be over cap, and they're going to have to clear up space, which is why I mentioned Josh Bailey. There's a couple of guys, Semyon Varlamov, $5 million, 1 year left. Bailey's got $5 million annually, 2 years left. We saw Pajot, Baville, 4.1, 1.2, 1.5, something around there. But I was at the draft, and first off, Montreal is a great place. Can't wait to go back. That was a time of my life. That was great. Very fun time.
We were at the draft too, actually.
Oh, very nice. Did you like your first pick?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of my first. Oh, listen, I'm one of the guys on the podcast here who got a lot of hate for saying Shane Wright was not going to go first overall.
He's a cocky kid. I mean, you saw that after where he stared down the Montreal table.
Allegedly.
Oh, he went on a radio show the next day with Seattle, and they asked him, and he said he did.
Oh, really? Because at a baseball game, he said he didn't.
He wants attention, probably.
Okay.
So he might say, I mean, I don't know the kid at all, but I think I don't blame him for being cocky, thinking he was going number one. I think when you're told you're that good, you're going to be the number one pick for a long time, mentally, you're just assuming that's what's going to happen. And you're like, they panned over to him clapping for, Yuri Sokowski. But yeah, it was very interesting. But Montreal was a great city. The draft was great, but at the draft, Villiers was there, and he's been a piece. He had a terrible 21-22 season. But him being at the draft, I don't think the Islanders were looking to move him at the draft. And I've heard that he's not being moved either. I think it'd be really awkward if they did move him during the draft. He just got up from the Islanders table and walked to the other team and just sat down with them. And that'd been a little bizarre.
Wow.
But so I think you're coming down to the Islanders either move Josh Bailey. He's got 7 games left before he reaches 1,000 with the Islanders, 1,000 for his career. But this is a business. You're trying to win now, make your team better. And Josh Bailey isn't part of the future plans. He had a really tough year. One of those guys that's a grizzled vet that turns it up in the postseason. But they have to get to the postseason for that to happen. He's not a strong enough regular season player. Again, he'll get the assists. The goals weren't there, but there were just times where the game seemed a little too fast for him.
That's it.
Like throwing the puck to the neutral zone when you had like just little things that you can understand a rookie making in his first year in the NHL, but not a guy that's been around. So I think if they want to clear the cap space, Josh Bailey, Varlamov is staying put. And again, if you're going to move his $5 million, it's not really $5 million because you have to sign a backup. So it's really like $2 million. So if you want to get rid of a contract and get $5 million off the books, which will help you sign Kadri, and if you want to make a veteran move and bring in a defenseman, he seems like the only guy that really could get it done. Like I said, Pajot, but I think moving Bailey doesn't hurt the Islanders. I think moving Pajot would be a detrimental loss.
Well, my question to you is, and obviously, we talked about moving cap a little bit and stuff. My question to you is, if for Noah Dobson, and I'm going to mention Noah Dobson because he did have 51 points this year with the Islanders, and was probably one of the biggest reasons, that why the Islanders are in this position as well, in terms of the fact that what his contract is going to look like. And I think for you, or the question I have for you is, what do you think he would get on the market right now? What do you think the Islanders should offer him as a contract? And is there any, have you heard of a specific number that potentially there's negotiating, or what? Because for me, I think the guy that gets 51 points, at least in my opinion, should get something between $4 and $5 million, depending on what type of player they are. And I think Dobson, 22 years old, I think he's proven in the NHL that he's capable of playing that role. And like you said, they added Romanov as well too. So they clearly have to sign those 2 guys before they make anything else. And so I don't know, is Dobson expected to make get a heavy pay raise, or is it going to be a bridge deal? What's the plan there?
I think it's going to personally be a bridge deal. I think, like you said, he had a fantastic year. It's 1 year, and he was playing with Dano Char, which, not saying that makes you better. They obviously worked well together towards the end of the year, but no, Dobson had the puck on his stick a lot. He's making plays a lot. Maybe with a different player, he's not having the puck as much. We'll see. I mean, he was a man on a mission, shooting the puck. I think he led the Islanders in shots in the season. I think $4 million is I think I could see a bridge deal for $4 million. Romanov's a little interesting just because he's not showing the offense that he definitely can. And again, I don't know if he could do that in the Islanders, but I wrote an article the other day. Adam Boquist, 23-year-old, signed with Columbus. He had 11 goals, 11 assists, and he just signed for $2.6 million on his for the next 3 years. And I think you could see Romanov get, I would say around there. I would say even like 2.2 for Romanov. And, you're doing Romanov 2.2. You're doing Noah Dobson $4 million. I would give Keeper Bellows a little above the league minimum, $850K. So that adds up to that would put the Islanders like $3.75-ish million over the cap, and then they have to clear the cap space. That's including having Kadri brought in at 7. So they would have to move a $5 million player. But I think Noah Dobson and Romanov could bridge deals for both. Obviously, Romanov wasn't arbitration eligible. Excuse me. The way he was. Islanders owned his rights. He's been skating in Florida wearing all full Islanders gear. So it's believed that the Islanders have deals already. I know they were all, Dobson was qualified. I don't know if he accepted. I don't know if they had to negotiate what they were going to do there. But there's rumors about him going to Vancouver for JT Miller. That's what we call clickbait, because the Islanders aren't moving. I mean, you're not moving. You just brought in a 22-year-old defenseman in Romanov. You're not moving out a 22-year-old defenseman in Dobson, who's coming off a year in which he showed you potentially that he could eventually be a number top defenseman, offensive defenseman on a team that needs offense from the back end. Again, we talked about the transition game before, but also you need your defenseman to score. And I think, Adam Pelech, who's was an all-star this past year, put up career highs in assists. I mean, he was scoring goals. Yeah, guys that were forced to play more offensively. But again, just having Dobson and Romanov, I don't think you would pair them off. I think having two 20-year-olds on a line together is a little risky. You have elite guys in Adam Pelech and Pulock. I think I wrote an article about this too the other day. I think it makes sense to separate those at least to start. I know how good those two have been together when healthy. Obviously, Pulock missed 26 games, 25 due to an injury this past season. But having Pelech with Dobson, I mean, that's your future number one line for a couple of years. You could have Romanov with Pulock just for insurance purposes if they make not rookie mistakes. They've been around for a couple of years, but make those non-veteran experienced mistakes there. You have backup. And then you have Scott Mayfield with, is it Salo? Is another veteran? Does Mayfield get moved to the deadline or next year? His contract has 1 year left. Who knows? But I don't think the Islanders are going to have an issue with Dobson or Romanov. Like I said, if you could get Dobson for $4 million on a bridge deal, I'd call that a win.
And in terms of the player of Kadri, we know that Lou Lamoriello, according to what I've been reading, he sees Nazem Kadri as a Claude Lemieux type of player, a guy that, played for the New Jersey Devils under Lou Lamoriello in the late 90s and early 2000s. Do you think that's a fair comparison for Nazem Kadri?
Yeah, I think it is. I think with Nazem Kadri, which works well with the Islanders, it was just they have this presence about them, right? He's never going to back down ever. He's going to go hard to the net. The Islanders have guys like that in Kyle Palmieri, Anders Lee go to the net, but Kadri brings that. He could score from anywhere. So so can Palmieri too, but he's going to drive the net hard. He's going to be a pest, not like Brad Marchand where you just hate him and don't respect him. Or if you guys are Montreal fans, so you guys definitely don't respect him. But yeah, just the way Kadri plays, and again, bringing that winning element, like willing to do whatever it takes. We all knew Kadri had a finger injury in which he had surgery in the postseason. And most players having surgery on their fingers can't grip a stick. We have no idea how much pain or what he was being given to numb the pain. But the guy's a warrior. That's when I watched Nazem Kadri in the playoffs coming back from injury. That guy's a warrior. He's willing to do whatever it takes to help his team win. Again, Claude, you like player. The Islanders, the reason I said he was such a great fit is because they have so many characters in that room that are just committed to one another. It's a very close group. A bunch of them have been around for a while together, growing up together. And you bring in veterans last year. Like I know Chara, who knows if he's retiring or not. He can play till he's 75. You have Zach Parise come in. And Zach Parise, as much as he struggled in the first half to produce, I've never seen a man work harder in my entire life. There was not one time, whether it was a game or in practice, that this guy took a shift off. He never missed a game. He played all 82. So it's guys like that, adding a guy like Kadri who wins and knows what it takes to win, is critical for this team because this team, you face a Lightning in back-to-back conference finals and just can't get over that hump. Kadri's one of those guys that could single-handedly put the team on his back in those big games and those big moments and get them over the hump.
And sorry, go ahead, Luca.
Well, my question, obviously, we know that Jesse Puljujarvi's had a lot of interest from a lot of different teams in the league. And I know that the Islanders have kind of been one of those teams that's at least kicked tires on him. He signed his, I believe it's 1 year, the $3 million that he got as a contract. And so my question to you would be, is he basically expected to, are the Islanders expected to make a move for Puljujarvi? And if they are, where do you see him potentially fitting in on an Islanders, team that, like I said, needs offense? And we all know that Puljujarvi in Edmonton hasn't really, lived up to the third overall expectations that he's had. But I think on a team with the Islanders, if he's playing next to, even a guy like Nazem Kadri, if he does end up going, or a Matty Barzal, we could see maybe someone turn around his career in that sense. So what are your thoughts? Have you heard anything big on potentially Puljujarvi going to the Islanders?
So I haven't heard anything about him. I know a lot of teams are interested in bringing him on, but the cap was the biggest thing. I know Edmonton's done with him. He's been done with Edmonton for a couple of years now. When you play with guys like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl and you don't show that, that this guy is a guy that should be a goal scorer and he's not, and he goes to arbitration. They avoid arbitration. They settle at $3 million. It's a full change. Is it worth it? Just because he's a project, right? So he's a good defensive player, but he's not scoring. And the Islanders are a team that needs scoring. I don't think it would take much to get him. I would say maybe a 3rd-round pick. You might have to throw in a guy like Kiefer Bellows. We're going to throw Bellows' name around a lot just for the fact that he had a much better this season that just happened. It's probably his best year in the NHL, but there's no real role for him as an everyday player. So you can use him as an asset in a trade.
Yeah.
Just the thing with Jesse is it worth taking him on, because you're going to have to do a lot of work with him. I don't know if the confidence is the biggest thing with him, not finishing, or who knows. Again, when you play with top players like that, you would think that this is a guy that would come through. He's got all the tools to get it done. Elliot Freeman in the 32 Thoughts podcast had shared that Puljujarvi is likely getting moved, but teams are having a hard time with cap, because in order for Edmonton to trade Puljujarvi, obviously everybody knows they're doing it for a cap clearing move there, which means that you're going to probably have to give up something else to get him. So would the Oilers have to give up a 3rd or a 4th? They have to give something else to a team. And again, 2 teams want to bring on a project. He hasn't proven himself. I'm not saying he's a failure. I think he come to the Islanders. If he played with Barzal, could that work wonders and be a cheap option? Sure. If you bring him in, though, and you don't do anything else, and it's not, you're in trouble. And again, he's a young guy, 1 year, $3 million. You could always flip him at the deadline if you wanted to. It's just very concerning that he hasn't figured it out yet. He's, I think, 24 years old?
Yeah, so, he left the league at one point, and he didn't want to go back to Edmonton. But once they changed general manager and Ken Holland came in, he convinced him to come back and say, give Edmonton one more shot. Unfortunately, that hasn't worked out, and now he's on the move. And like you were saying, cap space was a huge problem, right? So they sign a deal, so now teams know what to expect in terms of how much cap space they have to make to acquire a guy like Puljujarvi. And I know that in terms of the comment section here, we have Empire State saying that Bellows is so good, I'm not trading him for a big head. So, I mean, obviously, there's disagreement in terms of that comment.
Yeah. I mean, you can say whatever you want. I don't control it. He doesn't control it. We don't control what's going to happen. You look at, you can love Kiefer Bellows all he wants. He's not a particularly strong skater. Now, he's worked on it. He played at the World Championships for Team USA. He looked pretty strong there. You look, again, it's not even the fact that he's not good. Obviously, they're in the NHL. They're good players. I think he learned, especially last year, what it takes to do the little things, something that Wallstrom, I think, struggled a lot more with. Kiefer Bellows is 23 or 24 years old already, and he could shoot. The guy could shoot. He's creative. But in the Islander system, it just wasn't happening fast enough. I know he got a chance with Matt Barzal, and Matt Barzal is a player where he might drop it to you at any given moment. You got to be ready to shoot. And there was times against the Flyers, remember, it was like his first 5 minutes alongside Bellows. Barzal made a couple moves in the slot, cut back, and Bellows couldn't handle the pass. The opportunity goes by the boards. Soon after that, Trotz switched up the lines. So again, not saying Bellows is a bad player, but right now he's not an everyday player for the New York Islanders currently. I'm not saying Puljujarvi is. One could say that they're the same type of player. 2 guys that could score, that are strong NHL players. Physicality is one thing that Bellows showed. He does have that, his ability to play without the puck on his stick. But at the same time, you're getting old. We're in a league where you're young. You got to be young. You 20. These guys are coming up at 21, 22 and wreaking havoc on the league. And I'm not saying he's old at 24 and he can't figure it out. This is a top draft pick, and it hasn't worked out. Now, does Lane Lambert give him an opportunity, and does he run with it? Sure. Same thing can happen with Puljujarvi. Puljujarvi could stay with Edmonton and figure it out. Like, you never know with these guys. Sometimes it's just confidence in getting, first game of the season, putting the puck in the net. We see it all the time with players. The droughts that go on, and even minutes played too. Kiefer Bellows, his minutes varied a lot, and that's tough for young players, especially after a couple of years of COVID. Everything going against you socially, not having team bonding, all that kind of stuff has an impact on you. So, could Bellows be the real deal they thought they were getting when they drafted him high? Sure. But right now, there's not a spot for him in the lineup every day. And if you're going to try to make a move, I'm not saying if you get Puljujarvi, that's your only move. I think that can't be your only move. And we'll see if Bellows survives the summer with whatever the Islanders plan to do. But I don't think Kiefer Bellows is a guy that's not like he's not untouchable. I think there's a very strong chance that if they have to entice a team to take on a Bailey contract or whatever the deal may be to get a defenseman, whatever it is, I think there's a strong chance that Bellows could be going the other way to sweeten the deal.
And I was looking at, in terms of stats, Beauvillier, had a very strong start with the Islanders. Obviously, last season and even the season before that, being healthy, scratched a couple of times on their trots. People are starting to wonder, is this guy expendable? Will he be on the move? With Trotz being
Yeah.
gone, I would assume that under Lambert now as a coach, he was going to be given a bigger role and he's going to have more freedom in terms of what he could do as a player. But I do know as a fact that I was seeing some people like writing online that people were suggesting a Beauvillier and a Puljujarvi swap. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That's a
So
bad
the one
move.
thing I'll say, yeah, I would say it's not a good move for the sole fact that Beauvillier has proven that he can do it. Like you look at Puljujarvi, he has not proven it. Beauvillier has been there. I think what I just said about confidence, that's Beauvillier's biggest weakness right now. He had a very tough start to the season and just, he figured it out towards the end with Anders Lee and Brock Nelson. That was a very powerful line. Obviously, Nelson and Lee racked up the goals. But Beauvillier was part of that in March. He was part of that line. The biggest thing for him is just the confidence hitting the net. He had a lot of chances to just hit the net. And you have a couple of goals here or there. It changed their whole outcome of your season. And we talked to him after the season was over, and he said, I got to be better. And it's this upcoming year, if he's still here, it's a huge year for him because you have a new coach in Lambert. And again, we say new, we could throw new voices around, but he's been around since 2018 with the Islanders. He knows this team. The question is, does Lambert, like when Trotz came in, does he say, listen, guys, everyone's got a clean slate. Here we go. Prove it now. I don't care what you did. Again, like I said, Beauvillier's done it before. So I wouldn't make a swap. I think if you're going to move Beauvillier, you're going to move him for a defenseman. I don't know if that ship has sailed with the Islanders getting Romanov. If they want to do that, I think Beauvillier stays put. I don't think a swap would make sense again because Beauvillier has proven it. If Puljujarvi had proven, had a couple of years of just showing it and this fell off for a season or two, then maybe. But it's in there for Beauvillier. And the one thing Beauvillier can do is he's fast. He skates and he makes plays and he creates things for his teammates and himself. I don't think the Islanders should give up on him yet, but I think if another year like what we just saw happens again and we see some regression, then you could visit it again. But I think right now Beauvillier is going to stay put.
And to be honest, just to attach something else to the Puljujarvi deal. I mean, to be honest, I see him as a third line guy, Puljujarvi. I don't see him as a top line guy. I mean, sometimes he's played with Connor McDavid, but I mean, I don't know if a guy can't really perform with Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl or Nugent Hopkins, something's up there. And what says he's going to be performing with, let's face it, a downgrade player and whoever's going to be playing next to him with the Islanders, so
it reminds me of Alex Galchenyuk being paired up with Sidney Crosby in Pittsburgh, a guy that was drafted very high. There was a lot of promise, and people were saying he wasn't playing with the right players in Montreal. So he went to Arizona. After that, he's a part of the Phil Kessel deal, heads to Pittsburgh, and they're put him on a line with Crosby or Malkin and see this player flourish. Unfortunately, I think that didn't happen.
I think one of the other things too, and look, I don't mind Jesse Puljujarvi. I think for what he brings, I think he's a good player in that sense. But I think for Puljujarvi, it's also based on system too. And I think a lot of the times, when you look at players and you compare some players, it could be the system that's being played. And I think in Edmonton, I think a lot of people talked about how he's very good defensively, Puljujarvi, and if you look at his defensive numbers and his metrics, apparently he's one of the best defensive players on the team. And I think in a team like the Islanders who play that system, it could make sense, right? And I'm not saying it should happen, but I'm saying like you had brought up before, he makes $3 million for one more year. If he's put in an opportunity where maybe it is more of a defensively minded team and it's more of a counter-attacking style where he's going to be able to take the puck and bring it up the ice and generate some 2-on-1s or 3-on-2s, maybe he does get more points in that sense. And so it could just be a system in Edmonton where it was for Edmonton, it was more offensively minded. And when you play with Connor McDavid, if you're not able to play with Connor McDavid, okay, whatever. But sometimes it's based on system. Maybe it just didn't work in Edmonton because the system that they were asking him to play didn't necessarily work. That in a team like the Islanders who are more defensively minded, it could, definitely work. So I think that it's not a question of whether the player is bad or not. And I think in terms of that, I agree. I think he's a third line player right now, at least for what he's shown in his career. But I think if the opportunity presented itself, at least for the Islanders, and they didn't have to give up too much to get him, I would take a shot at it. I mean, he's still 24. You brought up Kiefer Bellows. I think he's proven more than Kiefer Bellows in the NHL at this point. And so I think if the Islanders would have to give up Kiefer Bellows to get Puljujarvi, I think I would make that move, any day, in my opinion. So
Yeah, you bring up a great point about just want to touch on one thing about the defense. The problem with the Islanders is they have so many guys that are good defensively and just don't score. And again, if you get that opportunity to get that chance, you got to hit the net, you got to bury. Puljujarvi hasn't really shown that to me, and I think right now the Islanders need to focus on, if it's not Kadri, if maybe JT, they got to get that bona fide goal scorer.
they should
Because
go
like
back
you
to
said,
Tarasenko.
Tarasenko, I would say yes, but if they had gotten
That cap hit
Tkachuk,
though.
well, not even worry about the cap hit. I think he would have been a cap casualty if they got Tkachuk, which would have made it easier to get him. But the fact that they didn't get Tkachuk, St. Louis, and Perron went to Detroit, they need goal scorers. So I don't think, and I heard that Tarasenko's happy there now. So I think that ship has sailed. I don't think he's going to get moved now.
And that's something that we've been talking about, Luca, Chris, and I. That the Islanders are a team that need a top or a bona fide elite sniper to play on a line with Barzal, and I think that if Barzal gets that sniper, his offensive numbers are going to skyrocket. And
I wouldn't.
We mentioned, sorry.
I wouldn't even say elite. I think just someone who could keep up with him, who's somewhat decent.
That's exactly you don't even need elite. You need, because I personally think if the Islanders brought Gaudreau in, right, there's no way he's playing with Barzal. They're too similar of players. It just wouldn't work. They both want the puck on their stick, and that's the biggest thing. Barzal is a guy who wants the puck on a stick, and he wants his teammates to be ready and waiting to shoot. Max Pasaretti would have been the perfect player for the Islanders to inquire about. I'm not sure if they did. He had a no movement clause in there, so he got to choose where he could go. I don't know if the Islanders were on that list. But that's a guy where he's just ready for the puck, and when he gets the puck, he shoots it. That's all Barzal. He doesn't need a superstar, just a guy that has a high shooting percentage and is willing to shoot from anywhere, because Barzal will create that time and space for them, and he might have to take one or two steps to the middle and just roof it. And that's all Barzal needs. But someone who could stay with him as well, skating is important.
You know who I think would be somewhat of a good fit? He has 1 year. He just signed with Chicago right now. But I think Athanasiou and Barzal would have been a pretty sick combination.
So the Islanders were in. So the Islanders were in on him. Was it last? I think it was last deadline. They had inquired about him. I think he would have been a great fit again, skating wise. BC decided to go to LA. So I think the Islanders were. I don't know how close they were on it, but they definitely inquired about him.
Do you think that there's a potential, and if he decides to get moved, that obviously he has a no move clause, but do you think that the Islanders potentially make a run at Patrick Kane if he becomes available, or if there's an opportunity there? Do you think that they don't touch that due to the fact that yes, he's got $10 million for one more year, but he is still an elite player, and so the asking price I think would be astronomical. So I'm just curious, because I think Patrick Kane in an Islanders jersey, to me personally, would be absolutely.
Well, he wanted to go to New York.
That's
when you hear players that want to go to New York, it's likely the Rangers. That's just how it works out. I would say if the Islanders don't get done what they want to get done this offseason, which, let's be real, if they don't get that goal scorer, it's kind of a failed offseason. But could they look at Kadri at the deadline? I think the Blackhawks should wait till the deadline, because that way, I don't I know there was a report that he was being shopped now, and then Mark Lazarus said Lazarus said that's not happening. I think the Blackhawks will wait to the deadline. They're in net management, so they might get, the same thing would happen with the DeBrincat deal or anything, or the Kirby Doc deals. They'll get fleeced. But I don't think the Islanders are a team that King would go to. I think likely the Rangers, but I don't know if the Islanders are going to touch that.
And in terms of a sniper at the time, I know we did, we used to do trade destination videos heading up to the trade deadline. And we mentioned, Brock Besser being a potential fit for Barzal on that top line. Unfortunately, he signed an extension with Vancouver, but his teammate JT Miller, he's a guy that could not only play at the center, but a guy who could play on the wings too. So I would think that would be an interesting fit. We know that Lou is not afraid of giving up assets for players, and a guy who's played in New York, a guy that has been linked actually again with the New York Rangers. Obviously, with the New York Rangers now, they add a guy like Vincent Trocheck to replace Ryan Strome, but can he head to another New York team in the Islanders?
Yeah, I think Brock Besser had a really tough year. Obviously, he had personal matters to deal with, the passing of, his dad was sick and his dad passed away. I think that took a heavy toll on him and his production. How could it not? I don't think that Vancouver is really going to want him. I think they're more likely to move Pettersson. I think Barzal would be a great fit with Brock Besser. Again, a guy that could shoot the puck, proven that he could shoot it. I just think the Islanders' mindsets are in other places right now. Again, they're an aging core. They want proven talent. Again, Besser's proven, but I don't think that Vancouver is going to move him. I think if they wanted to, they could have done it already. I just think that he's so good, and let's see what happens in a year where, hopefully his life's okay off the ice, and see what he does on the ice, because this is a Vancouver team that they could be in it. It could not be. It really depends, but I think Besser's going to have a huge year, and I don't think he's going to move at all.
One player that I saw rumors, and obviously we're Habs fans, so we obviously follow the news in Montreal a little bit more. But I think there was a rumor before between the draft and free agency where the Islanders were potentially in on Josh Anderson. I don't know how accurate that was or not, but I don't look. I'm as a Habs fan, I can kind of give you a little bit of a scouting report on Josh Anderson a little bit. I think he could help the Islanders out, but I don't think that if you want that elite pure goal scorer, I don't think he's your guy. I think he's a guy that, he's a power forward. He's able to play the body and, throw the hits when he needs to, and he'll get you 20 goals if he's played with the right players. But in terms of shooting, like when I saw that there was a link there between Anderson and the Islanders, I was like, I could see the fit, but his contract isn't the best. And for a guy who, misses the net a lot, and you talked about how they need players to bury their chances, I wouldn't necessarily see Anderson as an opportunity in the Islanders. But I want to know your thoughts, because I know that there was rumors with it at the beginning, and I don't know how far that went.
Again, when you were talking about stuff like that, it's very hard because it's Lou and he doesn't let things out. You're hearing that from other teams and other people that work maybe in Montreal. I heard the Islanders inquired. Don't know how. I think many teams did. Obviously, Anderson's got the cap hit. When you look at the Islanders had the 13th overall pick, could they have moved him? People complained, how can you give up a 13th overall pick for this guy? Anderson's pretty much played like you would expect a 13th overall pick to be like. So I don't think if they did that, it would be that as crazy as maybe many people thought. Again, one of those guys that shoots the puck. But I know that Montreal really likes him. And again, with that young team and trying to build on the fly, rebuild and get this team back to where it needs to be, I think he's a real character guy in that room. So I don't know. They were taking offers, but I don't know how likely it was. And again, I think it was cap, it was 5.5. Yeah. So again, a guy that could score. When you think of the Islanders, they just need someone who could put the puck in the net. And like Pavilla, you got to hit the net though to be effective. So the Islanders probably inquired, like many teams did. I don't know what was up for grabs for him. I know the asking price is pretty high. I don't know if the Islanders were willing to match that, and obviously no one did, because he didn't get moved, or the Habs said, listen, we're going to take him off the market. So there were some stuff there, but I wouldn't read too much into it. More, it was me. I did a couple of articles on it. Just, when the Islanders aren't doing anything, you got to be creative. And when they're not breaking news and all that kind of stuff. So that was more of a creative piece that kind of took on a life of its own, where people thought that it was a rumor. It was never a rumor. I don't know if the people thought I started that. Never did. It was just an article about, hey, could this be a fit here? We know that teams are calling, but yeah, I don't know if it was ever going to actually happen.
Okay.
Personally, I think he's kind of a unique player, Josh Anderson. I think he fits everywhere. I think every team would love to have a player like that. I personally think his contract is pretty decent for what he does. I mean, it's a little bit on the pricey side, but that's that's what you're gonna get if you come to Montreal. Listen, half his money is going away to the government anyway. So technically, he's getting paid 2-point-something million. Technically,
but he's taking home 2-point-something.
Yeah, it just doesn't show when you have to make trades, and the cap hit is not, unfortunately.
I get that, but he's a talented player. I think he's worth the money. I think he's my favorite player on the Habs right now. Just the way he plays, I think awesome, and I think the Islanders, he would be perfect. Once again, you need a fast-paced skater, and that's what he is, and he could score. The problem with him is the injuries. That's the only thing.
And that's the biggest thing too. Is you're bringing in a guy with 5.5 million hit, inconsistent, has to be on the ice to be effective. And Barzal played with him a little bit at the World Championships. They didn't have too much success, but he did skate with him, and he looked like he could keep up with him. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. And especially now, the Islanders' biggest asset was a 13th overall pick, and they moved that. So they don't have many prospects. They have a couple of prospects, Atu Ratu, William Defoe, who had a ridiculous season in juniors with St. John Sea Dogs. But they don't have much to give up. I don't know if those prospects. Dufour is probably more of a touchable player than Ratu, because Ratu, I think, could be the steal of his draft class. We'll see. But the Islanders don't have much, trade assets players that they can move right now to get those top flight guys.
Since we're on the topic of talking about wingers that potentially could play with Barzal, our comment section is very active, and CJ actually brings up an interesting suggestion, saying that San Jose is obviously going through a rebuild right now. Even though a lot of people are saying, well, they still have Erik Karlsson, they still have Vlasic. Well, it's because they have bad contracts. You can't really move those guys; they have no value. He suggests possibly taking a run at Timo Meier because he states that the new assistant coach of the Islanders spent the last season with the San Jose Sharks. So what are your thoughts on CJ's comment?
San Jose is a very weird team of what they want to do. Obviously, Hurdle got an extension. Meier wants to stay. They move Brent Burns, who was the main guy in that locker room, I think. I mean, you ever look at Brent Burns, he looks like just a guy that could be a dad on that team. They have Erik Karlsson, who believes his team now. I think Timo Meier is a young guy. I mean, he's been doing it since he broke into the league. Again, you just look at what the Islanders would have to give up. Teams aren't the San Jose, especially with the new GM and Mike Green, new head coach. I think they want to see what they got and try to convince players to stay. And if San Jose could turn around, I mean, their biggest thing was they were an older team. They need more from young guys, and they're rebuilding. But we see in the NHL, teams could turn rebounds around pretty quick. So, again, Timo Meier is one of those guys. You could talk about every winger you could bring in to play with Barzal, and it could work. And it also could backfire completely. Now, if I'm the San Jose Sharks, I'm not moving Timo Meier unless he tells you I don't want to be here anymore. Again, people thought Hurdle was going to get moved, and he agreed to an extension. Not saying he can't be moved, but he's committed. When you see a guy like Hurdle, if you're a guy like Timo Meier, you see a guy like Hurdle commit to staying in San Jose. That kind of entices you to want to do the same thing, right? I don't know, extension-wise, if they're going to get anywhere close to the same. But, again, you still have some veteran like Karlsson in place. You have, Meier, you have Hurdle. It's just about this San Jose Sharks. This season's going to be weird for them because you got to see how Quinn does as the head coach. He didn't do a great job in New York. You got to see how first-year Mike Greer does. Obviously, moving Brent Burns is a big thing, but it also shows you're committing to turning the franchise around instead of wasting around and having older players stay. So if I'm San Jose, I mean, I would see what happens this year because you never know. A new coach, a new GM, the whole franchise could be completely different with the way they play and operate. It could get players fired up and ready. I know Karlsson's probably fired up and ready to go because he coming off a solid year. I know he got hurt at the end, but the San Jose Sharks team I don't think they're going to be dangerous. I think they're probably a couple years away, but again, Timo Meier is 24 years old. You don't really want to bail on guys like that, especially when that's a guy you want to build around. So
and just adding on to the whole winger situation again, interesting comments here. We have Empire State suggesting that maybe internally they could have a sniper in Oliver Wahlstrom, where you have Isles Girl 13 saying that Wahlstrom just needs to beef up and he needs confidence this season to properly progress into a sniper that could have a huge impact on the New York Islanders. What are your thoughts on those two comments?
I think, Isles Girl 3 nailed it with Wahlstrom. I had written an article that Wahlstrom was the sniper the Islanders need. He's here. He's just show up. And obviously him and Trotz, they didn't butt heads. Trotz would always throw him under the bus in the media. I think it was just to push him to be better. Wahlstrom never really figured out how to play that defensive style. And also, Wahlstrom wants the puck on his stick. And when you play with a guy and you get a chance to play with a guy like Barzal, like we talked about already, you just got to find open ice and be ready to shoot. And I think it took Wahlstrom a little long to do that. I think he's got an elite shot. This is for sure be the sniper they need. They need to see it. Now, is that more freedom with Lane Lambert? Who knows? And if the Islanders don't do anything and Wahlstrom has a ridiculous year, they save the cap by not getting a guy like Kadri or trying to trade and get a guy like Miller, and Wahlstrom's your guy. But now it's okay. You get another chance with Matthew Barzal. You gotta make it count now because the Islanders are not in a year where Barzal's getting a contract here. They're not going to give him 20 or 30 games to figure it out, especially when the Islanders have to have a bounce back year because last year was so important with the new arena. This year, after as bad as year as it was last year, the 52 of the team, Lambert is not getting any younger, a new head coach with no NHL head coaching experience. He's been an associate for a while, but this is a huge year. There's not going to be time really to waste. And I don't think Wahlstrom's obviously getting moved. I think he's more of he has a great year and you already got a score, that just adds a secondary or tertiary element to your line. He played a lot with Pajot. Who knows? But I think we'll see in training camp. I think Wallstrom should definitely get a shot with Barzal again without Trotz. Again, a fresh start like we talked about. And for sure, he could come through. Again, just getting the puck on net. He got an elite shot. He could play on the power play. He had a one-timer, which is perfect with a guy like Barzal. Again, it's a confidence thing. Well, I remember Wallstrom was scratched and he got back into a game against Montreal, and every time he touched the puck, he looked very nervous. And you don't want a player like that being nervous. They're going to miss the net. They're going to get fast. And getting rid of it isn't an issue, but you got to make plays. Don't panically get rid of the puck. And I think with Trotz out of the way, it does allow Wallstrom for a new fresh start. And for sure, I could see him being the sniper they need. Again, confidence. It's making the most of opportunities here.
I actually want to bring up another player. We were talking about weird teams. I think the Pittsburgh Penguins. Too, so. Okay. Well, who you go first.
Mine was I was gonna stick to Montreal and say, I don't really like this player because I don't think he's good defensively. But we talked about snipers, and he's got a decent contract, and I think it would work. I think Mike Hoffman in the Islanders would make a lot of sense just because I know that he struggled in Montreal last year, but he's a guy that gets you 20, 30 goals if with the right player. And I think you put him on the power play, you give him the puck, you let him shoot, he'll score. So I think for the Islanders, it would make a lot of sense. I mean, and I think he becomes a cheap option too, because I don't think he's worth much on the trade market anyways. So I don't think he would be a guy that's super expensive. But I think, we talked about snipers, and I think Mike Hoffman in the right system with the right players can absolutely thrive in a system like the Islanders. So I thought about that, but Chris, I don't know who you had in mind.
Well, I was looking at.
If I could just jump in real quick, the one thing with Hoffman is he's not strong defensively at all. And you put him with a guy like Barzal, who's not great. He's solid, but he's not a defensive mind by any means. If you have him and Barzal together, you're going to be trading chances left and right. And that's one thing Trotz said about when Wallstrom was with Barzal is we don't want trading chances. We want making strong defensive plays and giving the puck up. And I think Hoffman would be an absolute disaster. Again, sniper, perfect. If he had a defense in him, he just doesn't.
Trust me, in Montreal, I thought he was a disaster too. Don't worry about it.
There's a reason why St. Louis.
I'm just trying to trade him at this point.
There's a reason why St. Louis kept on, scratching him. So
he only got 1 year with St. Louis on a tryout. So after the tryout,
and we thought he was going to sign for big money. He was one of the most sought out free agents, at the start of the free agency 2 years ago.
Yeah,
and the fact that he signed as a PTO, I mean, something was kind of fishy there. And now we know why.
Yeah.
Can't play defense.
But the player that I was gonna bring up, once again to play with Barzal, we're talking about wingers, and obviously he has to be somewhat affordable. Plus, we were talking about weird teams of, they're kind of confused as to we have old guys, we have young guys. But I think Kasperi Kapanen, I think would be perfect in New York. He would be a good pick.
Yeah, the problem is
that's not. I knew you were gonna say that. That's why I
solid defensive.
Didn't the Penguins just sign him? Yeah, he's not going anywhere. I don't know why they did that.
I mean, that doesn't just because they sign him doesn't mean they can't move him right away.
No, fair, but you just gave a player who really hasn't shown it yet with Penguins. You gave him more money than he should get. No team's going to want to take on that contract now, especially if he has a similar year.
$3.1 million for.
Oh, isn't a lot.
30 points.
But I don't think he was deserving of that.
I think that contract is what set the market for Puljujarvi to sign as well. As soon as I saw Kapanen sign that contract, I'm like, he's very similar to Puljujarvi in terms of these guys are drafted in the first round. They haven't lived up to expectations. We essentially thought both players would have been traded.
He's a solid player.
Nothing special.
Well, I mean, listen, for $3 million, he's pretty good.
But you're talking about a salary cap world where every penny counts. $3 million might seem not like a lot, but you're talking about, especially for a Penguins team that, depth is huge for them, but they didn't bring back Evan Rodriguez, who had a fantastic year. It just makes you scratch your head. And then you look at a guy like Danton Heinen on Boston. I think he was a 20-goal scorer. He signed for $1 million. So it's weird with how contracts are handled. I think teams, you're going to get a guy that's worth $3 million. You might not think that's a lot, but if he's not producing close to a guy that should be being paid $3 million, I mean, again, Heinen, you could say he's a stronger player than than Kapanen was.
He
and
is
what he does
actually,
for
in my
his teams.
opinion.
So the fact that he signed for $1 million and Kapanen got $3 million,
That was actually
that's tough.
that was a funny day actually because
Very.
you see Donato who hits the market and spends all that time trying to test the waters. He resigns with Seattle, and then Heinen, resigns with Pittsburgh, and he did the same thing too, trying to test the waters. Two players that excelled on their respective teams. Nothing too crazy, but had somewhat of an impact in the bottom six, and they just signed for affordable contracts with their respective teams. And there's actually an interesting debate that's going on right now in terms of in the comment section of what's going on with the whole Barry Trotz situation. Why did it end like that? So I'm just gonna read a couple of the comments here. You have a 2001 Lexa Talonis. Sorry if I mispronounced your name. The issue, as I see for the Islanders, is that they are essentially ruthless. I think they meant ruthless. Lou is clearly going for it, but hasn't done anything yet. Punting a great coach to what end? Shake up the room. And then you have Isles Girl 13 saying that I think Barry had family issues. He also is in coaching. Did you notice? He said he didn't have 100% focus, and maybe he lost the room. Adding to your ruthlessness comment, maybe
She likes that word.
yeah, maybe Lambert helps in this situation. And then she responds, 2001 responds, he was fired making a ton of money. Why go back to coaching? I don't buy your argument, but understand why you feel that way. So what are your thoughts in terms of the whole Barry Trotz argument in the comments?
Well, do you have an idea as to why he got fired too?
I think it was a lot more Trotz. I think Trotz had a lot more to do with the firing than just Lou cutting him loose. I think, first off, he's worked with Lane Lambert for a long time. I remember Lane spoke with us, and Lane was talking to Trotz. Trotz was hoping he was going to get the job. You could tell that Trotz's mind wasn't really there. His mom passed this year. He has a son who has special needs. His dad, I think, I don't know, I don't want to say anything wrong, but I think his dad might be, not assisted living, or is older, obviously, and lives in Manitoba. Trotz really wanted to go back to Winnipeg. He just couldn't 100% commit to coaching. I think he hasn't taken a year off since he started being a coach. So I think it just took a toll with everything that went on this year. I think Lou did him a favor by firing him, because then he still has to pay him. If Trotz decided to retire and lose out on that money, money at this point. But I think Trotz said, or Lou realized that, hey, Trotz is not 100% into it. Trotz keeps saying that he talks to Lou regularly. They have a great relationship, which is why I think, I don't know if Trotz said, listen, I don't want to coach, but I think Lou said, hey, are you 100% in this? And Trotz said, I'm not. And I think Lou at that point knew he had Lambert, knew if he didn't sign Lambert to a deal, he's probably maybe going to Detroit, would have been a great fit. Him and Eisenman played together in Detroit. They were roommates. So there's, I think, a lot more than people are ever going to find out. But I think that it was an amicable move by Lou. And I think Trotz had certainly a play in it. I don't know if he lost the room. I don't know. I think Trotz, when he was out with dealing with the passing of his mother and then COVID, Lou spoke how he saw Lane and he was sitting in on meetings and saw how Lane handled the team and how the players reacted. Now, I don't know if he talked to players. He said he didn't. Okay, he definitely talked to players in the exit interviews. You get a read. Lou got the read and he made the move. And I think Trotz understands. He said he was ready to go this upcoming year, like he would have been in a shot. But he wasn't 100% committed, and he's not going to return to coaching until then. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of speculation about what went wrong. I think Trotz had a lot to do with it. Whether he said it indirectly or directly, he didn't want to coach. Lou read between the lines and had to make a move to benefit the Islanders.
So it's more like Trotz, stepping away from the game, essentially, not him being fired.
Again, I think Trotz would have coached if he wasn't fired, but I think Trotz knew in his mind that he wasn't 100% in it. And I think you never want to coach that has 1 year left on a deal to be coaching a team, because not saying he's not going to care, but if Trotz went through this year and it was a tough year again and, he's not up for it, I know that's another year of a team that's an older team too, that you got to win now. You're in win now mode. And I think it was just a lot of things. Lambert was available and you knew you had to bring him back. Trotz had worked with Lambert. It's not like you're getting a guy that has no idea what he's doing. And he's been a head coach with the Islanders when Trotz was missing. He was an intern for that time period. And I think, Trotz keeps talking about how he's no rush to get back to the game, which just goes to show that he wasn't committed enough, I think. And I think Lou had to make the right decision for the New York Islanders, and I think he did Trotz a favor. And I think we'll never find out exactly what happened.
I think I was surprised. I thought, like when I saw that he got fired, obviously we didn't know the reasonings when he got fired at the beginning.
It was a shocker for sure by all of us.
Yeah. And
I was upset.
Yeah, I was upset. I actually got really upset, especially because I was like, I was like, no, it was more of a situation where it's like I think he's the best coach in the NHL, and so I think that because of that, you essentially obviously with no context, right? You see him get fired, and you're firing the best coach in the NHL because you had one bad season after he took you to 2 conference finals. Like it was a little bit shocking in that sense. But I thought for sure, you talked about Winnipeg a little bit. That obviously he's from there. I was convinced that he was probably going to Winnipeg to at least coach there.
He said he was going to go, but when he pretty much went there and he had to make a decision, he 100%. He goes, I'm not committed to coach. And to coach, he said you got to be 100% committed. And he said he couldn't do it to Winnipeg. Like he has friends that work for the Jets. Obviously, he's from the area. He said he's a great relationship with the GM. Should have a day off. He said he couldn't do that to them, and you got to respect it. Trotz has coached for a while. He's a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah, sorry to cut you off. What are your thoughts essentially on him trying to look for maybe a general manager position? Because I know there were some talks about that he wasn't committed to coaching, but maybe as a president or a general manager role, he was more up for that. So what are your thoughts on that exactly?
I mean, you look at Nashville where he could step in. Obviously, he coached there for a long time. I know he bought a house there. I mean, these guys could buy houses anywhere they want. But I think he loves coaching. I don't think that'll ever go away. And I don't know. He might want to take a management role just because he could take a step back, focus on. He said he had a lot of things that handled this offseason. I know he said his daughter was starting her own business. He wanted to help her get that off the ground. All these things. And I think if you're at a more of a managerial position where it's not, it's day-to-day stuff, but you're not, highly involved with coaching and practices and all that kind of stuff, he could still do what he wants to do. I could for sure see him doing that, but I think he's got a passion for coaching. Now, I could personally see him never coaching again. I think just retiring from hockey. He's put in the work. But it sounds like he's hungry to get back. He just wants to make sure that it's the right time for him, his family, and also mentally that he's ready to come back.
Yeah. Just for me, I would say one of the things that I found really interesting as well is that the Islanders, they're one of the Trotz really brought them, he really played a really good defensive style that was really entertaining. But one thing that I gotta say, and I'm the Islanders have such a good goaltender in Ilya Sorokin, and I just think that they need to find a way to get back to winning ways, because I think Sorokin, for me, even last year, he showed that he's capable of single-handedly winning them games, and I think he proved that a lot last year too. And so, for me, you've got such a talented goaltender like him, and obviously we've seen the Russian goalies with Shesterkin in New York as well. You've got Sorokin there, and I think Sorokin's, he's been so good for the Islanders that it's you need to see them go on a run, because I'm so curious to see how far he can honestly take them, because he's really been even last year, he impressed me so much. I was like, oh my God, the fact that the Islanders are, have a losing record and he's just playing out of his mind is just, it was ridiculous to me. I was like, oh my God, so that's.
So Trotz came in and changed the culture, this whole team. Sorokin's a franchise goalie at number one. He's going to get most of the playing time, even if Varlamov's here. And just how it has to be if you want to win games. You don't want to tire him out. Shesterkin obviously was tired. But Shesterkin's going to play 65 plus. Him and Sorokin they're the same. The talent is just unreal. The anticipation. I'm a goalie, so I just love honing in on goaltenders and the way they work. It's just so fascinating to me. But both these guys are unreal, and you don't want to waste away valuable time. No, Sorokin's 27, entering his age 27 season. He's a guy that's if the Islanders are going to win a cup, he's going to play a huge part, like goaltenders have to be at the NHL level now. You take Kemper, he made one good save in the finals in the last minute, and they won the cup. I don't think he's a Stanley Cup goaltender that I would pick. I think Sorokin, Shesterkin, and Vasilevsky. Obviously, Vasilevsky's still the top dog, but you look at just the talent level is absurd. And he's unreal. The biggest thing for him this past year was getting rid of those weaker goals. He was making those jaw-dropping saves, but a couple of off-angle shots. Again, he's still learning the NHL game. This was his first year where he faced the whole league. Shortened season, you played in your division only. You saw the same shooters over and over again. Now you play a whole new league. You're facing different angles, different shots, players you've never seen before. So it was definitely a learning process, but this guy's ready to be a number one and run with it. And if the Islanders are going to do anything, it's because of him, and that defense in front of him has to step up, because as much as he bails the Islanders out left and right, it's going to tire you out. You can't rely on that for a full, especially a full 82-game season.
That's it.
And I just wanted to thank Lex in the comments section, 2001 Lex, Isles Girl 3, Empire for their contribution in terms of like getting a debate going. So if you guys haven't subscribed, please subscribe because we would like to hear more from you guys. The engagement is awesome. And in terms of Nazem Kadri, going back to what we mentioned at the start of the video, do you really like? I know that there's a whole, depth in terms of depth at the position of center. There's a lot of players there. Is it possible that Kadri could be moved to the wing and play with Barzal on that top line, or do you think that's just a ludicrous idea and that's not going to happen?
I don't think it's ludicrous, but when you look, the only thing I would say is you're talking about face-off percentage, right? And Barzal doesn't take the majority of his face-offs. Usually it was Anders Lee or Parise hopping in there. Brock Nelson's even under 50%. You're looking at a guy in Nazem Kadri. I'm trying to pull it up here so I make sure I get the right number for you. His career is 49.2%, but besides this past year, he was in the 50s, last 4 years prior, with his high 56, 55. So I think if the Islanders are bringing him in, he's going to play center. Again, you can play wherever you want. Face-offs doesn't really matter. But I think this guy's a center. He wants to sign as a center. Could you move him to the wing and see what works? Sure. But I think he becomes one of your stronger face-off men. I think you got to take advantage of that. Again, an Islanders team that doesn't generate offense. If you have an offensive zone face-off, you want to win that back. And you want to produce there. Because if you're going to lose those offensive zone face-offs, then you're going to lose out on offensive opportunities.
And I think the biggest question for people is, because I know we were talking about the need of getting a winger to play with Barzal. Is signing Nazem Kadri necessary?
So, and I got a couple more minutes for you guys.
No problem.
With Kadri, I look at it and is he the best player the Islanders could go out and get? No. He's the best available free agent. And I personally, again, in my article a couple weeks ago, I said he's a great fit in the Island, but doesn't make sense. You know what you need. The Islanders know what they need. They need a legitimate winger who to play with Barzal, a legitimate scorer. Now, Kadri's not a winger. So are you going for the best player available, the best fit? Now, I think there's a move where you're going for the best player available. And could he be a great fit? Sure. But I look at a guy like a JT Miller or Pasaretti. Those are guys that I think that would make more sense. I think you're creating more questions than answers by bringing Kadri in. Again, we talked about it already, how, his mindset, his winning mentality. He's won before. He knows what it takes to get over the hump. And those are all critical things to have on a team. It's critical. You need that in the locker room, on the ice, off the ice, whatever it may be. So I think Islanders have to make a move. I don't think they should be rushing to making a move. And I don't think Lambert would just make a move for the sake of making one. If he thinks Kadri's the best player to bring in that can help his team and be able to bring in, again, if you're going to go for a JT Miller kind of guy, that's via trade. So you have to be able to move and part ways with assets. And again, your 13th overall pick is no longer in play. You do have picks coming up. But I think if the Islanders, the better move would be to go for that legitimate sniping scoring wing via trade. But if they feel like they can't do that and they have the cap space and they think, hey, the only way we're going to be able to improve right now is via free agency, then Kadri's your best player available. It probably makes the most sense going forward to make that move.
Yeah.
And we have one last question to ask you before we end today's episode. A proposal from Antonio Russo saying, "What are your thoughts on Jesper Bratt?" We all know that
that's weird. Devils, that's crazy.
Lowballed him essentially. We found out today in terms of an offer. He was looking for something in the $6 million range. He was offered something around in the $4 million range. Do you think it's possible that maybe the Islanders try to offer sheet him or try to at least trade for him?
Yeah, offer sheets are crazy. Lambert said he doesn't even believe in that word. Vocabulary. I think offer sheets are dangerous. When you're going to offer sheet someone, they're certainly going to try to do it to you. And especially when the Islanders have a guy like Noah Dobson, who could have been offer sheeted. Like, you run a risk. I had brought up the offer sheet proposal for Rasmus Sandino in Toronto. I thought the Islanders could use him. This is before they got Romanov. Like, he'd be a perfect get. Or it might have been after the draft. Just a perfect get to have to start that defense. So offer sheets are dangerous. But it's not like Luda bringing guys from Devils, Palmieri, Green, Parise, John McLean, who coached with the Devils and played for the Devils under Lou. Like, no, I don't know how you Lobo Bratt. Jesper Bratt. He's a fantastic player. Again, I don't know how much it is about trading in the division. I don't think the last thing the Devils want to do is give him to the Islanders, and I think it would cost more. I always believe a team should inquire. Why not? But yeah, I don't know how you lowball a guy like that because Brad is severely underrated. He's a great player, and with what the Devils are trying to do, he fits the mold perfectly. So I'm not sure what Thomas Fitzgerald, the GM there, is doing. But clearly there's an issue right now, so we'll see what happens. But I mean, yeah, definitely I would inquire about him, but what's it going to cost? And then you have to figure out, okay, is it worth it? And the Devils willing to even do that. So it is an interesting idea, though.
And as an Islanders fan, I'm sure you want to see the Devils go down anyways, right?
I'm not Islanders. I cover the Islanders, so we stay away from the fandom a little bit.
Okay.
I grew up on Long Island watching the Islanders. I live 15 minutes from the Coliseum, obviously. Just try to, covering the team. But this Islanders team is just in win now mode. That's all I'm going to say is that they got to do moves that they're going to win now, because if they're not going to go for it right now, like signing Kadri would be a go for it move. If they're not willing to do that, and with the aging core, you're going to get to a point where you're going to have to blow this thing up.
Okay.
Fans aren't going to love that. They've been through heartache and dark ages for a very long time. It's been very long since they've won. They back-to-back conference finals, like we said, a bad bump in the road last season. And the hope is that they can rebound in this year. But if this year is a struggle again, you got to start moving those pieces that are part of your core. Is it a Barzal? Who knows? Obviously that's the last thing the Islanders want to do. But this upcoming season is so critical for this organization, just for what they need to do, because this is probably the last chance with this core before they blow it up, unless they go on a run again. Again, is going on a run enough? Because right now the Islanders are winning the cup or bust. That's really where this organization's at since Lambert brought in Trotz, since this organization's been there since 2018. It is that. Even if the Islanders have a bad year, it's like, all right, it's a bust or a Stanley Cup. Going to the playoffs and getting bounced in the conference finals or whatever round, it's not good enough anymore for the fans and for the ownership group. So I think everyone's on their wits' ends, and this has to be a huge year for the Islanders, or there's going to be significant changes.
Yeah, and I think that pretty much covers everything. I don't know if you guys have anything else to say.
No, I think we're good.
Well, we just wanted to say thank you once again, Stefan, for coming on
problem.
and giving your intel in terms of the New York Islanders. And also we have a chat saying by Griffin Ramsdale saying that he would love to see Kadri being signed by the Islanders, despite him being a Colorado fan. So I mean, the support in terms of the Colorado fans for him to sign with the Islanders. So that's nice to see that they're not upset that they can't extend him, because he deserves to get paid, like you were saying. He's gone through a lot of stuff. He was a key player for the Colorado Avalanche, even though he had a lot of support in terms of McKinnon, Rantanen, Landeskog, and so on.
Yeah.
But he's a Stanley Cup winner, and deservedly so. So so we just let's see what happens in terms of the Kadri dossier. But it seems to be that he's going to sign with the Islanders. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, we're doing a 1,000 subscribers giveaway. If we reach that number by August 15, we will announce a winner, and that winner will get to choose an NHL jersey of their choice. And so we're looking forward to that happening, and I guess you guys are looking forward to participating in that. And Stefan, good luck this season in terms of covering the New York Islanders. Hopefully it's a more exciting season this year. Hopefully they make the playoffs this season, and they're a lot more active. And I think they're an interesting team from now heading into the start of the season, because of all these rumors that have been coming in this past week. So it's an exciting time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me. Really do appreciate it. And anytime you want me to come back on, I'll be ready.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Hopefully, if Kadri signs, we could get you on and talk about your reaction.
Yeah, we shall see.
Perfect.
All right.
Anyways, thank you so much. And thank you so much, everyone in the comment section, everyone that gave their thoughts today. We really appreciate it. And we will see you on the next episode. Have a nice night, guys.